Hi everyone, Charlotte here from New Zealand Shores. Immigration New Zealand have released some more detail around the Parent Boost visa, which is due to be released at the end of September 2025. So applications will open in just over a month, which is really exciting. The Parent Boost visa is designed to reunite families and allow parents to spend more time in New Zealand with their New Zealand resident or citizen children. There are some nuances that have come to light since immigration's announcement next week. I thought this would be a really good chance to provide you with some updated information as to what this Parent Boost visa will look like and the requirements that you will need to meet. Just a little bit about us quickly. So New Zealand Shores has 11 licensed advisors in total. We are licensed by the New Zealand government, which means we do have to adhere to a legal code of conduct in the services we provide. New Zealand Shores was founded in 2009, and since then we have grown to 11 licensed advisors. Our team is made up of 10 different nationalities, and a fun fact about our team is that only 3 of us were actually born here in New Zealand. The rest of us have migrated to New Zealand and subsequently obtained either New Zealand residence or citizenship. So our team know what it's like to go through that migration process. We can also help with Australia, and whilst we aren't talking about Australian visas today, for parents you can reach out to us separately and we can provide guidance in that space if you would like us to do so. The Parent Boost visa has a few key criteria that need to be met when applying. So the first one is that you must have a New Zealand citizen or resident child residing in New Zealand. So they must be able to prove that New Zealand is their home. There isn't any minimum time threshold as to how long your child has to have been a New Zealand resident. So you can actually sponsor your parents for this visa as soon as your residency is approved. There are one of 3 financial thresholds that your sponsor, your child living in New Zealand, will need to meet. You must also hold a health insurance while living in New Zealand for the duration of that visa. It is also really important to note that this visa is not a pathway to residency in itself, but there are pathways to residency available for parents, and we will go over that at the end of our presentation. This visa can be granted for a maximum of 2 years, and visas will be granted in 2 lots of 5. So you can apply for one 5-year visa and then apply for a second 5-year visa if you wish to do so. As I mentioned, there's financial thresholds that have to be met either by the sponsor, the child living in New Zealand, or by the parents who are applying. So if you are using your child in New Zealand as your eligibility criteria, they must be earning median wage. So one sponsor must be paid median wage to sponsor one parent. If you have 2 combined sponsors, and combined sponsors can either be your child's partner or a New Zealand resident or citizen sibling who is living in New Zealand as well, then they will need to have a combined income of 1.5 times the median wage. So the thresholds aren't actually particularly high to meet. However, if you are a couple and you're wanting to sponsor a total of 4 parents in total, then the requirement does go up by 0.5 times the median income for each additional parent. There is a table available, so please do reach out and we can give you some guidance in that space if it all feels a little bit too confusing. There is also the option for the parents to use their own income, and this is based on New Zealand superannuation rates. So for one applicant, they must have a minimum of 32,611 per annum as a guaranteed income. Guaranteed income can come from a number of sources, including pensions, social securities, or even if they have businesses or investments offshore that are generating that income. Your parents can also use their assets, and that their assets must start at a minimum of $160,000. So they must be able to have access to that money to be able to support themselves in New Zealand. It is a really important factor of this visa to maintain a health insurance while in New Zealand, and that health insurance has to cover 4 factors. So it has to cover emergency medical care, it has to cover repatriation, it has to cover return of remains, and it has to cover cancer treatment. So given that these are older people applying for visas, and they are people that have not actually lived in New Zealand and contributed to our tax, they haven't contributed to the economy in New Zealand, Immigration New Zealand are very dead set on people being able to look after themselves financially and being able to have funds available via insurance to look after any healthcare needs that they have. Failing to maintain insurance will be a breach of a visa, so it is really important that this is maintained throughout the duration of the visa. If you don't maintain insurance, there are a couple things that happen. So Immigration New Zealand could deem you liable for deportation, they could cancel your visa, and if you intend on applying for residency in the future and you haven't maintained that insurance, it could actually impact your ability to apply for residence and have that approved. So really important that this is maintained for the duration that you are in New Zealand. There are a few key things to be aware of. So because this is a visitor visa, Immigration New Zealand want to make sure that people are maintaining ties to their home country. There are a couple ways they are going to do this. So there will be, in the 3rd year, you will need to submit a new medical and you will need to leave New Zealand to submit that new medical. So Immigration New Zealand will not allow you to submit that further medical while you're on shore. You will need to leave the country to do so. So sometime in that 3rd year, that will have to happen. There will also be a stand down period of a minimum of 3 months after you've held your first 5-year visa. So once you've held your first 5-year visa, you will need to leave the country. It could be longer than 3 months. It will depend on how long Immigration New Zealand take to process that second application, but you will definitely need to be outside for a minimum of 3. So please do just make sure that that is something you factor in. You wouldn't necessarily have to return to your home country per se, but you would need to leave New Zealand throughout that period. There will also be compliance checks on the insurance front. So as I mentioned, failure to maintain the insurance is a breach of visa conditions. It will be checked at the 3-year mark. So when you submit a further medical, you will also have to submit evidence of having maintained that insurance for the previous 3 years. And if you are intending to apply for the second 5-year visa, you will have to again show that you have held that insurance and will continue to hold that insurance. There are a couple residency options available. So you can hold a parent boost visa and also apply for a residency visa at the same time. The first parent option is what we call the parent category. Now, this can be quite a tricky one. So there are 2 steps to this process for the parent category. The first step is that you submit an expression of interest into a ballot. Expressions of interest are withdrawn randomly. Your expression of interest can remain in that pool for up to 2 years before it expires. If you aren't selected within that 2-year window, you can submit a further expression of interest, and there is no limit on the number of expressions of interest you can submit. Immigration New Zealand are now withdrawing 2,500 EOIs or expressions of interest per year. So it is a relatively large number. There are approximately 12,000 expression of interest sitting in that pool at the moment. However, so it is very much randomized. So you do have to be prepared for the fact that you may not actually be able to apply for residence under this category. In order to be eligible, it is based on you having a New Zealand citizen or resident child. If your child is a New Zealand resident, they must have held their resident visa for 3 years before they can move ahead with sponsoring you. It is also based on your child's income. So a starting rate is 1.5 times the median wage. Again, there is a table that Immigration New Zealand provide because the more parents you want to support or sponsor for residents, the more money you have to earn. So if you are interested in viewing that table, please do reach out to us and we can provide that to you. Once you have had your expression of interest withdrawn and you are invited to apply for residence, once residence is approved, you are not eligible for permanent residence for 10 years, and either the applicant or their sponsor will need to be able to support themselves financially within that 10-year period, as a person cannot apply for a New Zealand pension within that 10 years. So that's just something to be mindful of. As a sponsor, you are obligated to actually provide for your parent financially if they cannot do so themselves. And if you are found to be not looking after your parents, then again, it could come back on you. So it's definitely worth making sure that that is viable for you as a family. The second option, whilst it is easier to get in a sense, it does have a financial investment component attached to it, which can be harder to meet. The child must be a New Zealand citizen or resident. However, there is no minimum time frame as to how long your child has held New Zealand residency for. So again, the minute they got residence, if you were able to apply under this category, then they could sponsor you straight away. The applicants need to have a minimum of 1 million New Zealand dollars to invest into New Zealand, and that investment must be retained for 4 years. In addition to the $1 million investment funds, they must have an additional $500,000 in what we call settlement funds. So that's money that can be used to help them establish themselves in New Zealand. They then also need to have a guaranteed annual income of $60,000 per year. So that can come from pensions, company returns, returns on rental properties, pensions, social security, investments. So there are a number of options for which they can use for that 60,000. The 60,000 can also be spread across two applicants. So for example, one person could have a pension that is paying out 30,000, and then the other applicant could also have a pension that's paying out 30,000 to combine to meet that income. People who apply under the parent retirement category can apply for permanent residence after 4 years, so after that period of them having retained their investment in New Zealand. If you are interested in any of the visas we have mentioned, the first step is for us to undertake a very basic eligibility assessment, and what that will involve is us having a bit of a conversation around how you will meet that criteria to sponsor your parents, or how your parents will meet that criteria themselves. Once we have established that, we can offer you a one-on-one personal consultation with one of our licensed advisors, and then as soon as you're ready to hit go, we can commence your migration under any of these visa categories. If you are interested, please do reach out to us at info@New Zealand Shores. We would love to hear from you, and we'd love to help.